We are booting up the meeting. We will call to order the regular meeting for the Millwood City Council for Tuesday, December 13th, 2022 at 6 p.m. At this time, we have a quorum present of members both in person and telephonically, and so we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, Christina, if you could call the roll this evening.
Mayor Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Beasy.
Present.
Councilmember Culler.
Present.
Councilmember Van Hees.
Present.
Councilmember Sander.
Present.
Councilmember Stravens.
Present.
So let the record show that we have a quorum of 5 council members this evening. And at this time, I would look to our council for a motion on approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Would any member of the council wish to make any amendments or changes to the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing or seeing none opposed, tonight's meeting agenda is approved. We will begin with our agency reports. Tonight we have with us Chief Frank Soto from Spokane Valley Fire District 1. Chief.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So these are the numbers for November of 2022. So we'll start off with our monthly total. We had 1,892 calls for the month. I will say that this is the busiest November we've had in history. The previous one was last year, and this is 135 more calls than last year. This month, those 1,892 calls produced almost 2,500 responses. If you look to your right there with a bar graph, you will see that we had 6 units with over 200 calls each for the month. Next slide, please. Here is just a graph or a warm reading of our busiest stations. So you will see the Opportunity neighborhood, roughly stations 7, 8, 6, 1, and 10 were the busiest units. Specifically 7 and 8 were really busy, followed by station 6. Next slide, please. Here's a breakdown of the year-to-year changes. So we're roughly 4.5% busier than last year's call. The biggest takeaway is the EMS calls. Our advanced life support calls are roughly 4.25% higher than last year, and our basic life support calls are over 5% busier. So moving and shaking. I will say, and I'm very proud to say, that our fire calls are just a hair 10% under last year's calls. So our fire prevention division and all of our personnel in general are doing their jobs, getting in the streets and preaching about, fire safety. So next slide, please. So this is a year-to-year bar graph analysis from 2018 to 2022, and you will see that we have just surpassed 20,000 calls for the year, almost at 21,000 calls for the year. And so again, we are steady and steadily getting busier. So next slide. So these are some pictures of some of the calls we went to this past month in November. This is 16310 East Marietta. It's a commercial fire equipment room that we had on November 23rd, and you can see the flame impingement on the picture on the left, up to the left of the ladder. So we were able to get there quick and get that out. Next slide, please. This is the new Amazon building. This was on November 13th. If you look just to the right of the fire truck on the left, you'll see those big, large trash compactors. One of them ignited on fire, and again, we were able to get there early and put it out to keep it from lighting the actual huge building on fire. So that was a great stop there. Next slide, please. These are two separate fires. The fire on the top was also on November 23rd. It was a structure fire on North Locust. And then the fire on the bottom, and which I will say we got there very quickly and were able to put it out very fast. However, the fire on the bottom, that was on East Coach, and it was on November 13th. And we were, we got there as quickly as we could. It was also a double wide, which sometimes the walls and the building itself is very flammable, and so it got ahead of us before we got there, and we were still able to save the structure, but it did take a lot of damage. Next slide, please. This is all the same incident. This was on Trent and Pines on November 26th. So this was a fatality. This was a motor vehicle wreck, and again, there was a loss of life here. Next slide, please. This was on November 15th on East Lindsay. If you remember, this was a structure fire. We had a police standoff here as well. This is significant where the guy lit the place on fire while inside of it. And so these two pictures are of the same structure. We were finally able to get in there and put the fire out after the police gave us the okay to move forward. Next slide is also part of those pictures. This is the final picture after we had put the fire out, but obviously it took significant damage because we couldn't move in to put the fire out because of life safety. So that's the last picture. I just wanted to share some pictures with some of the calls we went to this past month, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from the council for Chief Soto? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. So that brings us to, do we have any other presentations tonight? No other presentations. At this time, we will look to see if we have received any public comments. Have we received any public comments either by electronic mail, written mail, or directly submitted?
No, we have not.
So no public comments received. Mr. Worst, do we need an executive session this evening?
I would ask for, yes, I would ask for an executive session. If you want to take that at the end of the meeting, there's no action to be anticipated.
And I don't think there's anything in the executive session that would influence any action we are taking this evening on tonight's agenda. So if the council is amenable, we will move item number 7 to item number 13, to before item number 13. So we'll put item number 7 in there. So we will take the executive session at the end of the meeting. That brings us to our action items tonight. Our first action item is 8A, our consent agenda for tonight, consisting of the November 2022 Treasurer's Report, the payroll and claims, and the vouchers. The minutes from the November regular City Council meeting, and the minutes from the November 15th special City Council meeting. Anything else on there? No. So that is our consent agenda for this evening. Would any member of the council wish to take any of those items separately? Seeing or hearing none, do I have a motion on tonight's consent agenda as presented?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing or seeing no opposed, tonight's consent agenda is approved unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to item 8B, which is a public hearing on the 2023 budget and the subsequent ordinance 535, the 2023 budget. So at this time, have we received any written testimony, either by mail, electronic mail, or directly submitted to the city regarding ordinance 535, the 2023 budget?
No, we have not.
Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to provide public comment tonight? We have nobody in the audience. So that brings us to, actually, I need to do that public hearing at the end. I apologize for that, so we'll revisit that. So let's go to the presentation on ordinance 535. Ms. Mackin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Do you have it for the screen? I sent it to you this afternoon. Check your email. Yeah, my desktop.
Yeah, we'll just hold 1 second while our clerk goes to retrieve that. Time to play with your phones. No.
Did you hear me say that Deuce was here earlier
Yes.
and tried to come up the stairs and I had to stop him?
Did he want to scratch?
He wanted to hear the mayor talk to it.
Oh, he's a good boy.
He's very embarrassing.
This is your dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
When he sees the mayor, he starts just,
Oh, what kind is it?
he's an Australian cattle dog.
Oh, very
Yeah.
nice. Keeps
Yeah.
you busy. They're smart.
Yeah, I have two of them.
Oh,
A mini,
wow.
a big one and a mini one.
You need to have them herd some cats or something.
I have two that they
Oh,
like to do
that's
that.
very good, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I need to move out to property and get a couple mini goat, or, mini cows,
Yeah.
mini cows.
Or you could do llamas. I'm sure they could.
Llamas would, any sort of 4-footed animal would work. There it is. All that just to say not much has changed. Okay. So only a few changes from the last presentation. I did account for the increase in, anticipated increase in county treatment. So that's basically a pass-through, but we have to count for bringing it in and taking it out. If you'll go all the way to the capital projects. You'll notice some crossed out there. I don't know why that sidewalk one I have at 30,000. It was much higher than that, but both of those are scrapped due to the fact that we did not get the TIB grants. So we obviously can't afford to do them on our own.
I think those would be our match.
That, yeah, I think it was our match, but you actually have to account for the whole project since, you know, you're gonna spend the money, the whole amount of money. I did add in a Public Works office remodel. If you'll recall, it's been quite a few years back now. I looked up, it might have been 2016 that we enclosed the first bay down here to make an office, and that's as far as it went. We just enclosed it. We never really made an office. So now that staff is growing, we're looking to finish that up. And those were the only changes. It actually reduced our expenditures by a lot. So any questions about any of that?
Any questions for Debbie on any of the items that were presented in the either three-year snapshot for revenue or expenditures or the proposed capital projects for services, street, water, or sewer? Any of those? Any questions from, I will ask, any questions from Shauna or Andy out there in the ether?
I have nothing there.
Anything else?
Agreed.
Okay.
No question. Thank you.
Thank you. So with no questions on the 2023 budget as presented, I will ask at this time for to open the public hearing on the final reading of the 2023 budget ordinance 535. We'll open the public hearing at 6:18 p.m. For the video record, let us indicate that we have nobody present in the audience, but we will make the call. Not required, but it is done by tradition. First call for any public comment. Second call for any public testimony. Third and final call for any public testimony. Having no one come forward to give public testimony or no public testimony received, I will close the public hearing at, we'll call it 6:19 p.m. And we'll look to the council for a motion on ordinance 535 as presented.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 535 as presented, the 2023 budget.
Is there a second? Yeah, Andy, you seconding?
Yes, sir.
Andy Van Hees has seconded. Is there any discussion from the council on ordinance 535 as presented? Seeing or hearing no discussion, all in favor of ordinance 535, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 535 is passed. 5 ayes, no nays, and that reflects that is a quorum plus 1 in affirmative. So ordinance 535 passes tonight. Thank you very much. That brings us to ordinance 534, amendments to the 2022 budget. Ms. Mackin.
This is just a last-minute cleanup, I should say last of the year cleanup. And part of this is missing, I think. But in any case, it's the usual cleanup we do. I also removed some of the capital projects that we're obviously not going to get done in the next few weeks. So most of those came out of water. I think if you look at the bottom line, you see it reduces quite a bit of expenditure for this year.
Any questions for the council from the council for Ms. Mackin on the amendments to the final budget for 2022?
Oh, also you'll notice the closure of the street fund there.
Thank you. Yes, as we have discussed, our street fund is being closed out and those items transferred out to the general fund. Any questions? So at this time, I would look to the council for a motion on ordinance 534 as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 534 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor of ordinance 534?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 534 is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And so that brings us to our resolution 2022-13, our VIBA motion. I'll let Ms. Mackin explain that one.
This is the resolution we have to pass every year in order for our employees to be enrolled in the VIBA participation.
Standard housekeeping resolution. Any questions for Ms. Mackin on our voluntary employees beneficiary association plan? Not seeing or hearing any. Look to the council for a motion on resolution 2022-13 as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-13 for the VIBA.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, resolution 2022-13 is passed unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to resolution 2022-14, our utility rate structure.
That's me.
Ms. Mackin.
I just love to hear myself talk. This only goes to sewer. Following recent meetings with county sewer, our treatment costs went up quite a lot. In the past, we've been able to keep with our current structure and current amount of $10. After that, we were absorbing a little on behalf of our citizens, but we cannot absorb this one. The per ERU is $13.55, and with this structure, every commercial business will be charged $13.55 per ERU. Any questions?
So any
Does that make sense?
Explain ERU, please. Briefly.
Equivalent residential unit.
Okay.
So every residence is allowed about 695 cubic feet a month, and that makes up an ERU. Okay.
And so for clarification, we're getting rid of tier 1, tier 2 for...
No, that's underwater.
Oh, I see.
That's the water structure. No change to the water structure.
Okay.
There's sewer.
Yeah, this isn't the final form resolution, though. We carved out all the water from the resolution.
We carved out all the water.
This has water.
Oh, well, it shouldn't.
So can we not move on this tonight?
Can they make,
Well, it's part of your budget, right?
nothing changed in water, so, and the table says NA for water. Our previous resolution, this is the previous resolution that had sewer when there was no change to sewer.
All right, you guys proceed, that's fine.
So at this time, to be clear, we are looking to pass the increase or to adjust our sewer rates on a per ERU basis from our $10 a month standard to $13.55 per month.
Right.
To reflect the charges to the increase in fee charged to the city for treatment and disposal of our sewage charged to the city by the county. And if that is the only thing we're doing on this resolution, but you haven't seen it, correct?
No, I've seen it, but go ahead, proceed.
So, are there any questions from any member of the council regarding what we're doing here?
So just to be clear, nothing changes on the water system.
Nothing changes on water, nothing even changes on the city rate. This is purely the county pass-through rate.
So if there are no questions, do I have a motion from the council on resolution 2022-14?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-14 as presented.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, resolution 2022-14 is passed unanimously. Thank you. And so that concludes our action items for this evening. Mr. Van Hees, I know you're ill. If you wish to depart the meeting at this time, that would be possible if you wish. Otherwise, we will move on to our reports for this evening. And beginning with our Public Works report, Mr. Allen.
Okay. So November was a very interesting month for the city of Millwood and the staff with the issue that we had with the water. And spent a lot of hours trying to resolve that issue that we had. We were able to do it successfully. It just took a little while to do the investigation and determine exactly what the cause was. And once we determined what the cause was, then we were able to move forward and disinfect the system and get it back up and running. So as you know, we ended up isolating the water tower, and we found after further inspection, we found a vent on the top that was had a design flaw that caused an issue with intrusion into the water tower. So we were able to get that modified and replaced within a week, and then the rest of the time we just spent trying to get the system up and running and disinfected. And so we're just now getting the tower back online. We got it disinfected and filled, and drew our first test today, and then we'll take another test tomorrow. As long as we have 2 consecutive tests, just like we did with the system, the water system, then we'll put it online. So while we had it drained and emptied, we decided to take that time to do inspection and do a little cleaning on the inside of it, which was challenging because the temperatures had plummeted, and so every time we tried to do something in there, the water froze to the bottom, so we'd have to add more water to melt the ice in order to clear the rest of the debris out of there. And actually, we contacted our engineers and had them take a look at it too, just to look at the inside of the tower, because it's been a while since we've been inside of it. The last time that thing was actually recoated was about 30 years ago. So on the interior, outside's been painted twice, but the interior actually looked pretty amazingly well for the time it's been. Even the paint manufacturer that was there and took a look at it couldn't believe that it had been 30 years on that. But most of the time it's full of water, so it's not susceptible to air and oxygen, which is what caused the deterioration. There was a few places where we had some corrosion up higher, which we were already aware of. But once we got inside there, it didn't look as bad as what we had anticipated. And then there was a little bit of corrosion, just surface corrosion on the floor and a little bit on the side. So we had them take a look at it. They're going to write up a recommendation. They're thinking that, probably just do some spot and touch up in there, and it'll probably be good for another 5 years before we have to do recoating. But that gives us time to budget to have that recoated. So it was good to actually get in there and do out of all the bad things that happened, with the water tower, has actually beneficial to the city for several different reasons. One of them was to be able to take a look at the water tower and get a visual on the inside of that, and you know, make sure that everything was still in good shape. And then just for the guys to be able to go through an emergency like this and work, you know, do some problem solving, work together as a team, and the whole staff actually, to be able to do this. It worked out good. We found, you know, some deficiencies in our plans that we, you know, would do, but we've sat down and we had a little debrief afterwards, and we're able to tweak our emergency response plan so that when things happen next time, we have a better idea of how to handle some of the situations. Some of the technology had changed quite a bit since the last time that we did it 20-some years ago when we had a similar incident. Like I said, we learned from it, and hopefully this doesn't happen, not even in another 20 years. But they'll be prepared, and let's be prepared for any type of emergency that may come our way. So I told them, if you can handle this, you should be able to handle anything that gets thrown at you. So anyway, like I said, we're getting the system back in line. There will be a newsletter that went out, actually there is a newsletter, and it went out today with the water bills that gives a explanation of, you know, what happened, how we handled it, and, you know, how we proceed to go forward. So, see, leaf season got cut short. We ended up only picking up like one load of leaves before the weather changed, and then we had our water incident, and so that took priority. And then once we got the water incident under control, we went back to picking up leaves for a very short period of time. So, but we were able to get another, was told, remember?
I don't remember.
30 loads or something like that. Typically we do 60 to 80 loads. So there's still a lot of leaves out there, which.
But the snow fell, so.
It did, yeah. So we had to move back into our snow removal mode because we use the same trucks for doing both things. And so anyway, we ended up gearing up for that. And unfortunately, we had to cut it short. And we were hoping that, you know, we even went longer than what we normally would because we ended up going up after Thanksgiving to try to do it. Actually went to the 1st of December to try to catch up on some of those leaves. But like I said, the snow came and we got forced into take care of that first. It doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon, so it'll probably be springtime. We'll have to decide what we're going to do then. So while we're down, we actually took the leaf vac apart and are changing out the impeller and some of the hoses, and so that's going to be our winter project, is to get that all maintained so it's ready to go for the next time that we do leaves. We did have a couple of TIB applications that we had put in for 2 projects. One was a Argonne project. It was from Trent to Frederick. It was pretty extensive project. You know, almost $900,000 project. Unfortunately, that one did not get selected for funding from TIB. And then the other one was the sidewalk project that we're going to do over on Dalton. It was kind of a experimental one that we were going to try to do with working around some of those older trees that we've got down there. And I did talk to the guys from TIB, and we're going to have a sit down with them after the first year, kind of go over the applications that we submitted, and, you know, see, you know, what, you know, why they weren't selected or how they rated anyway, well, against some of the other projects. Problem is there was a lot of applicants this year, so a lot more applicants than there was funding. And you know, we were fortunate to get funding on quite a few of our projects from TIB. I mean, it's a great program. They're able to offer the funding to us, and our match is like 5%. I mean, you're not going to find that anywhere. So they're a great partner, and we'll continue to partner with them. We do have a new regional manager, and that's who we're going to be sitting down with and talking with them over the next application. So we'll be better positioned to apply for next year. So We did finish the tree inventory, so that kind of got delayed too because of the weather. But they just finished up the tree inventory yesterday. We got the last 20, 30 trees that were left on the list. So we do have the inventory, and then in about a week or two, we'll start putting the data together and then start working on the management plan. And then we'll have a public meeting in February, so we'll advertise that. So hopefully we get good participation on that for that public meeting to discuss what the future is for all of the trees, but especially our historical trees there that we're really concerned about, and what the prognosis is for those and replacement plans. So stay tuned for that. There should be a date coming out for that. We did have a little bit of vandalism last, I don't know if I told you this or not, but we, last weekend or the weekend before, noticed that some of our lights on the trail weren't working. So the guys went out there and discovered that somebody had gotten into the junction boxes at the bottom of the poles and had stripped out some of the wire, which makes no sense because the amount of wire that they're able to get out of there is just like little strand wire. It's going to cost us a lot more money to repair that than it was for the amount. They probably got $2 worth of wire. It's going to cost us, probably a couple $1,000s to repair the damage that they've done. So we went back, and after we discovered it, we went out and then we bought some vandal-proof screws to put on those base covers. So hopefully that'll take care of the problem, but I just can't believe it. I'm not sure why somebody would even do that. So they did it in the areas behind the park where there's less visibility, because it's not around any houses, because the rest of the trail is pretty much backed up by houses along the way. So I think we are going to have to look at getting some of those security cameras that we had discussed and putting them in certain areas just to monitor what's going on. But anyway, so if you see that there's a few dim spots along the trail, we've got an electrician coming in this week to take a look at those and see what we can do, make sure that hopefully all they have to do is pull some new wire back through them and connect them. So anyway, it's been a busy November. Any questions?
I do have a question, Paul. So in terms of logistically, how does it work when our tower's down? Do we open a pipe to Spokane Valley and then we have pressure, or do we have pumps that provide pressure? How does that work?
No, so the whole system is run off our pumps. So the reservoir is more of a backup emergency water. We do use it for kind of like stabilizing the pressure, so we use that. So it's part of our system that we use. It's always being filled or drained. But no, we have several interties, but we would only use those in an emergency situation where we had a major pump that was down. But since I've been here, we've never had to open up any of those interties. Yeah.
So we basically have a closed system then for Millwood? And so
Yeah.
it's just our system, and then in the event of an emergency, we would open a tap.
We have the ability to open up several taps with on either side of Millwood. So we have an intertie with Orchard Avenue, actually 2 interties with Orchard Avenue, and we have an intertie with Urban Water on the east side.
Okay.
But yeah, it would have to be something really terrible for us not to have enough water to pump, because we're backed up with generators as well. Right. So yeah, and then typically we have enough storage to get us through.
Okay, interesting. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman. Paul, on the inspection of the reservoir, interior of the reservoir, is that going to suffice for the next 4 or 5 years, or we have budgeted for next year, $50,000 to do to that inspection? Is that?
We still need to do some repairs on it. We still want to do them at this time because it's not a good time to do any type of repairs to cold metal.
This year will.
Yeah, so we'll probably. We'll get the recommendation from the paint inspector and see what they say, but I'm guessing that we're just gonna be able to go in there and do some spot repairs. Some of it they can actually do underwater while the tower is still being used. But like I said, we'll just kind of wait till we find out what the recommendation is from them. We had planned on doing some repairs to the ceiling of the reservoir, because that's typically where
That's
all
right.
the issues are, because that's what's exposed to the oxygen, which creates the corrosion. So, we'll find out, you know, what they think the cost on that would be. We couldn't even get anybody to actually give us a cost to do any repairs. The last couple of years, we've tried doing it, you know, and then during, you know, COVID, everything was kind of shut down, so.
Good.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Allen? Thank you, Paul. So we'll go to our treasurer's report, or nothing from the treasurer tonight. We've heard everything. So we'll move on to clerk, planning, and code enforcement. Ms. Jansen.
I just have a couple of things. Councilmember Kohler and I met again with the branding folks. They got the results from the survey that was sent out, and they are working on their first draft. We are hoping for to see some proposals from them before the end of the year. The Planning Commission is continuing to work on the park plan. They have landed on some decisions for most everything except for the children's water feature, so we're going to continue to work on that. I wanted code enforcement. We have a couple of cases that are ongoing, but it has slowed down as it normally does this time of year. And then just make you aware of our office closures for Christmas. We will be closed Friday, December 23rd, and Monday, December 26th. And then for New Year's, I believe January 2nd. Is that correct? Monday, January 2nd. That's all I have unless you have any questions for me.
Questions for Christina? Not seeing or hearing any, so legal report. Mr. Worst.
Nothing to report again, just would like to request an executive session for approximately 10 minutes. So, thanks.
And Mr. Allen pretty much, from the mayor's report, Mr. Allen pretty much covered, the water tower incident was the major issue we had. I will say that because our leaf situation has been truncated, and we do know that because of the snow removal we had to perform, we probably, when spring melt comes, we're probably gonna have some areas where we do have leaf pile up as part of that melt goes, and we will be looking at those areas as melt and spring comes. We know we're probably going to have to do some spot cleanups in some areas around the city where we have piled leaves and snow, etc. So we will revisit that as we get closer to spring. Other than that, I don't really have anything to report at this time, other than I appreciate Mr. Worst and the executive session coming up, so thank you. That concludes reports. Item 9, council information, no action or discussion. You have the October 2022 Sheriff's Report in your packet. And that brings us to item number 11, public remarks. This is an opportunity for citizens in the audience to address the council in person or by submitting their remarks. Have we had anybody provide any written testimony tonight?
Yes, I have written, and I can submit it now.
Okay.
No written comments.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the council this evening? Please come to the mic.
You want this? Yes, it's what I'm going to say. It's a copy of it. Come up here, yeah, it's louder. Okay, my voice is shot. My voice is kind of shot.
So please state your name and address for the record.
Michael Ellis, 3101 North Fowler Road. And this is in regards to the code violation of residential lighting. And this is a little paragraph that I made. It's called lighting the code The lighting code violation has affected my use of my property for more than a year. I am unable to use my property due to the high intensity light. unable to have my windows open in the summer, and inside my house is illuminated. It is hard to sleep and my anxiety level is high. I am seeking resolution of this violation so that I can control the lighting on my property. Thus far, it has been 133 days since the violation request was submitted. I contacted code enforcement, have been in emails and photos with the mayor. To date, enforcement of the residential lighting code to resolve the lighting on my property has not occurred.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. So what I will say is that Mr. Ellis did give a complaint to the city.
Multiple.
And we took that complaint, we issued a letter to the person who was in violation, or in supposed violation. There was no resolution. We were attempting to resolve it through education initially. The violation continued. I believe it was last week. We dispatched Miss Jansen and Mr. Schwigo, just Ms. Jansen, to go and, on behalf of the city, personally observe the violation during the hours of operation. So the city has now actually observed that there is a violation and agrees with Mr. Ellis that there is light trespass from the adjacent property. And we have instructed Mr. Worst to begin proceedings to enforce the code at that time. So it did take a while, Mike. It
133 days.
And I would say that 133 days would be what it would be if we drag him to court. So we're trying.
Why not a fine? Why not a fine? I don't understand. You throw out fines like they're dimes a dozen. This guy gets nothing.
I will allow.
I testified. I got a code enforcement letter, and the first thing it said, 14 days, $250 fine.
And I will allow Mr. Worst to address that if he wishes.
Okay, so first and foremost, the council needs to be reminded, we don't engage in question and answer back and forth in public comment. You have an opportunity to make comment. The mayor made a response back to it. Your opportunity for comment's over. The city has a policy of working to achieve voluntary compliance, has always had that. They strive to do that. I will be candid with you, that particular neighborhood seems to have competing code enforcement violation allegations back and forth. So the delay was to determine whether we have code violations or we have neighborhood disputes, because code enforcement cannot and shall not be used to enforce neighborhood disputes. The city has gone through the process. They've been in contact with the various complainants, and we will proceed with the code enforcement matter as directed by the city.
I can say that the adjacent property owner has also been involved in a vigorous defense of their lighting and their ability to light in regards to public safety. Mr. Worst has received over 15, 20?
Yeah, somewhere over 15, under 20.
Between 15 and 20 emails from the resident with the lighting, responding to the enforcement letters that we have sent. Because it is an after hours enforcement activity, you got to be there when the light's on, got to see it. So we were attempting to not have to dispatch staff outside of normal business hours, but it was apparent that we were not getting the resolution that we needed to. So we have a long photo documentation now. We have measurements. We have everything. Code enforcement does agree that, as I said, it is a light trespass issue, and we will be moving ahead based on the code that we have to get that enforced. So we will go forward from there. Questions?
And in legal counsel and staff's opinion, we have enough ordinances in place to protect neighbors from light intrusion, and we have measurement devices to make sure that lumens and so forth are enforceable.
We don't have a lumen regulation, and I would say that that becomes problematic at best. What we do have is first of all, we are complaint driven. So there are plenty of folks in the city that have bright lights around and other folks don't seem to mind. So we're not going around looking at lights with light meters, measuring distance to the properties, measuring angles of illumination, measuring foresights and backsights and what is it? Upward lighting, downward lighting. The amount of light intrusion regulations are substantial that we could use. We adopted the City of Spokane Valley's language, which is more of a nuisance-based than an actual quantitative-based. We have the same issue with noise. We do not have a quantitative standard for noise. We have a qualitative standard for noise. And so sometimes we get individuals asking us about decibel meters and this and that and distance to the property and everything. We do not have those types of standards because we do not have the ability to enforce that type of law or that type of code, not law, code. So what I would say is that there is based on our code, the determination by the code enforcement officer is that it is a violation of our code. It is light trespass under our code. It is egregious enough that we can see a sound person, reasonable person, not sound, reasonable person would say that that is a light trespass issue. We have attempted to work with the owner of the light and provide levels of education as to shielding and distance, vertical distance of the light above the ground surface, all those sorts of things. That person has, as I said, engaged in a vigorous response directly with council. So now that is why we took it to the next step. We tried to do engagement, but now we have a code enforcement action cited by a code enforcement officer, and we will move forward from there to deal with said issue. I would not be surprised if the owner of said light does not make themselves present here at some point during code enforcement issues. So please be aware of that.
Yeah, I just chime in. How dare you forget that came from the planning commission?
I believe it came from city council first.
That's true. No, we did make that. I won't reiterate what the mayor said, but in terms of trying to have specific readings, that's fraught with peril at times. I would say that the city on a previous occasion went out site visit, and depending on where you stand, and we did not enter onto private property, but depending on where you stood, you couldn't tell from photos whether there was light trespass or not. You couldn't tell where the light started from one property or whether it originated from a neighboring property. So that's the first effort at review. I don't think staff nor myself were overly confident with proceeding on that basis. So as the mayor indicated, staff went back out with a little bit more focus and opportunity to review to get a better view of the circumstances. So.
And Mr. Ellis did provide us access to his property. We cannot trespass unless invited. Mr. Ellis did provide us access to the property, and that is what has the actual observation from the rear of his property by the code enforcement officer is what is providing us the data and the standing to begin actual proceedings in Superior Court if necessary.
And council recommends no changes, modifications to existing ordinances.
No, not at this time. Let's see where it goes. Let's see what happens, and I think something that's always kind of on the radar for Christina and the city is, to the extent that we pursue a code enforcement matter and we learn a little bit about it, whether we need to go back and tweak or revise or review what our standards are. To my knowledge, I don't think we've had to prosecute a light trespass. We've had various noise trespass or noise complaints over this year, but those have subsided with education and working with the property owner. So, let's see where we go on this and see. I know it's been enforced, I know it's been used across the state highway over here, so, I'm confident that it's a, enforceable standard, so.
Thank you.
So that brings us, sorry. So that, seeing no other public remarks, that brings us to our council remarks this evening. We'll start with Mr. Stravens.
No real council remarks. I'd like to wish staff and all my council members happy holidays and happy new year. We'll see you next year.
Thank you. Mr. Sander.
I'd like to, mention Winterfest last Friday. It was good job by all, and I appreciate the city's support for the tree lighting. It was just a little chilly out there, but it was a good event. And echo Kelly's comments about happy holidays. See you next year.
So we'll see, is Mr. Van Hees still out there in the ether? I think Andy dropped off, so we will move on to Mr. Culler.
We'll just echo Kelly's comments. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and I think staff will get a good couple deserved days off after the last month or so.
Unless it snows again. Ms. Beesey, any comments this evening?
Just wishing everyone a happy holidays.
Thank you very much. So that concludes item number 12, our council remarks this evening. We have designated this item right here for our executive session. Mr. Wurst, would you like to describe the purpose of our executive session this evening?
Yes, I would like to ask the council to convene to executive session pursuant to RCW 423110 subsection 1I to discuss pending litigation with legal counsel for 10 minutes unless otherwise extended. Again, to be clear, there will be no action asked of the council upon conclusion of the executive session.
Informational only.
Correct.
And so we would like to retain Mr. Allen, counsel, myself, and you, correct?
Yes.
All right, so yes? You have to stay. So, so at this time, we would ask to clear chambers and move to executive session for 10 minutes. We will reconvene at 10 minutes after we start. So check back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Sure.